Hey everybody, I am going to show you a basic comparison between the BoneFire Whisper hammock and a traditional hammock. I'm not going to go over a lot of stuff here. I'm not going to go over weights, not going to go over a lot of the technical aspects. I just want to show you how a traditional hammock sets up, what kind of steps are involved traditionally, how the BoneFire sets up. The idea of the BoneFire hammock is a minimal, simple, fast hammock. In a nutshell, it's not necessarily the best hammock if you're going with people. You're looking for a big open shelter, something to hang out in, something to sit in. Not necessarily the best for that, but if you're out putting on miles, if you're doing a more minimal, lightweight pack, if you're just going out by yourself, stuff like that, the BoneFire Whisper is definitely a hammock to consider. I myself like minimal setups. I like simplicity. I really like the hammock. You know, like I said though, if you're going out in really nice weather, you want something bigger with I do a small tarp with my BoneFire. Maybe not the best. Sometimes I want to take out a bigger, more lounging hammock, and you'll kind of see that as I set it up, what I'm talking about, hopefully. So first of all, I've got a traditional netted hammock, traditional bottom quilt, traditional top quilt, everything like that. I just got them loosely thrown in some backpacks and a stuff sack over here, so not necessarily 100% how they're going to be in my backpacks. It's going to usually be a little bit harder to take them out, but I'm going to show you just a basic setup. My trees here are a little bit further apart than I like, so the hammocks are not going to be set up perfectly. I'm not trying to set them up perfectly. I'm just going to get them up in a base configuration, kind of show you the difference between the setups and the times. Kind of keep it in mind, I'm not trying to make it perfect here. So first of all, I'm going to do the traditional hammock on the further tree back here. With this, I've got this company that has gone out of business. What the company is Hammock. Really traditional netted hammock, very similar to Dream Hammock. Dream Hammock being out way before them. With my setup, I've got a cinch bug suspension, pretty good suspension. It's got a couple issues that I don't like, but it works and it's fast, so pretty fast. A little bit of a pain to adjust though. Like I said, just kind of setting up here just to show you differences between traditional setup and the setup of the BoneFire. So on this one, foot end is going to be where your zippers come and meet, where they do zip over this area. So this is a little low, you know, and I would traditionally put my straps a lot higher between two trees like this, but as I said, I am not actually setting it up. So, and traditionally my foot end is going to be higher than my head end, but once again, not setting it up, not worrying about that, just showing you speed, kind of. So, it's going to be a little hard to show you here, but we got our top quilt. I like a down pillow, so we got our down pillow. We got our bottom quilt. I'm not trying to crazy rush here. Not ever a speed thing with me. So this for the most part is pretty good now. Then we're gonna need our rain fly. And there's definitely this is just a newer one that I got with my REI dividend a little bit after Christmas. Got it for the girlfriend, but I use it too. And this is hammock coolie tarp. Pretty cool, pretty big. I don't think it's I'm not quite liking it as much as I like some of the other large tarps that doesn't have the tie outs and stuff in the middle of the tarp to be able to basically pull it out from you. I don't know if that even makes sense. Like I said, not trying to do a perfect setup, just trying to kind of show some speed here. So, obviously, this rain fly is not at all set up how it should be. But because of its size, even though the hammock's off to the side, I could kind of bring the hammock over a little bit, or I could wrap the hammock strap around the tree and have this more centered and be able to deploy the rain fly. But on a day like this, you might not even need a rain fly if you're camping. It is a little windy. So, and I totally messed up. I was going to hook this to the back tree, but this is a traditional hammock setup. It takes a little while. I guess I might as well show the strip down too. So, since I messed up and didn't do it how I wanted to, show you taking this down. Just so you all know, the line that hammock supplies on here is just terrible. It's really bad. I got to replace I replaced all the guy out points. I didn't replace the main line yet. I need to replace it. It's really just rough coming apart. Just bad line. So, and really not a bad setup. You know, it's pretty quick. I've done it quite a few times, so I'm fairly fast at it. Like I said, it's going to be a little more complicated when you're out doing it in the real world, because you got a lot more packed in your pack. So usually you're going to have to strip some stuff out to get your hammock and other goodies out. If you're like me, I pack them at the bottom. So, not bad. Pretty fast setup, you know. A couple things I would change about it. Just to obviously center the hammock under the tarp. Obviously the angle of the setup was not quite right, so I don't think that would necessarily be that comfortable. Though hammocks are usually comfortable, even if they're not set up quite perfectly. But I definitely would choose a couple trees a little bit closer, I think, out in the woods, because for me to get perfectly comfortable in these two particular trees, I usually have to use a chair to set the line up height. So in this, I do it pretty traditionally. Everything just kind of wrapped up in the stuff sack. Now obviously if it's raining out, I'm not going to be wanting to set this on the ground, but I need more caffeine, and it's early and windy, and I don't particularly like being on camera, so I'm just winging it. And this is kind of a pain to get this all back in there. I opt for long straps because the last thing I want is to get out and to have my only two trees that I find that are perfect to set up in, really huge trees, and to not be able to set up. So I do really long straps, 15 footers usually. Some people do 10 footers, and some places 10 footers work, and 10 footers honestly would probably work most places I would go here in Minnesota. Usually a little bit smaller trees and stuff, but I have been to a couple places where having those extra long straps allowed me to set up on some trees that I maybe wouldn't usually be able to, and really made my experience better based on where it was set up. So I do the long straps, kind of a pain to put away. All right, so now let's check out the BoneFire. This is pretty neat. These particular straps on this hammock, I put them in a sack, just try to not have them super tangled up, but they're probably super tangled up. Yeah, that's all right. It also helps keep them a little dry. So what we have here is some cinch buckle, and they're a little bit different. I like the cinch buckles a lot more than I like the cinch bugs. They're a lot easier to use, but what he has here is a couple extra hooks. Hook your hammock to, hook your tarp to, and I'll show a little bit more of that later. So I'm just hooking it up to the same spots. Okay, so with the hammock here, got my head end. I'll put it over here. Got our foot end. Then got our rain fly This particular one, I use my hammock gear Cuban rain fly, and the neighbor dog is barking. Sorry, barks a lot. We're just gonna have barking for the rest of the video. That's alright. And so how this is stored: pillow, top quilt, both inside. We're set up. Tarps perfect, perfectly centered because of the system, the hooks. Hammock's at a pretty good height here. As you can see, the tarp is stiff enough. And the nice thing about this is that with this, how it is, it's a 10.5 foot hammock. So as you can see, it's not quite as good for lounging, which I said. So I've got my ridgeline here, but it's not bad. I mean, I can sit in this. But what's kind of neat is because it's a 10.5 foot hammock instead of an 11, your ridgeline sits lower. So if you can imagine a loop, if you're an 11 footer, your ridgeline sits up like this. It's longer and the ridgeline is higher. With a 10.5, it sits down lower, thus the ridgeline is shorter, lower to your head. Disadvantage is going to be, obviously, as I sit in this, you can see that ridgeline's on my head. Now, I can chill like this. It's on my head, it's not bad, but not quite that space of a 11 footer. The ridgeline is up here above my head, so not quite as good for lounging, but you can lounge in it. But what's really nice about this 10.5 footer is that your tarp can sit lower to the hammock, because the hammock's shorter, so you can have a lower lying tarp. And in my opinion, this makes the 11 foot tarp a lot more viable in terms of bad weather, because this tarp, when I deploy it, it comes down pretty low, even though it's only an 11 foot Cuban tarp, which they only have about 4 feet or so of tarp on each side. And as you can see, it took me literally no time, and I'm laying the wrong way right now. My head end's actually over there, but I'm just here so you can see me. It took me literally no time to set this up, and to be now in camp, set up, good to go. Well, another thing I didn't show is just with the bottom quilt, you oftentimes have some fiddle factor. I'm pretty fast at setting up my tarp and my bottom quilt, and I'm usually pretty fast if there are adjustments to make, to get those adjustments made. But any of those fiddly adjustments, this totally eliminates them. So there's none of that. About the only fiddly adjustment is your suspension angle and height. And this actually, but this hammock isn't too terrible. Yeah, that's pretty near where you want to be. I mean, I think if you brought that up a few inches, you might be pretty good. So this is actually not bad hammock for these trees. And just to show you, I'm not sure how good this will reflect on the GoPro where it's sitting right now, but even though this is a pretty small tarp, and you can watch Jeremy's videos if you want to see really how this works with a single line, but you come down below the hammock pretty much if you do a pretty low setup. And I do have some extra. This does not come with doors, this tarp. I didn't order it with doors, but I did have my retrospective moment that doors are a good idea on these tarps, especially because they're so lightweight. So I did order some doors to add to it that you can put on it. But as you can see, this comes down to the bottom of the hammock, the bottom of the quilt. So that's one of the big advantages of having a hammock that is a 10.5 footer versus an 11 footer. That's your big advantage in my opinion. So I'm not sure if there's many other questions to answer on this. Some things that perhaps he doesn't show too well on his videos are like the gear loss and stuff like that. But you know, if you look at the website, you can kind of see what's going on with his hammock and what all the features are. But in a nutshell, it's a very lightweight. It's lighter than my other hammock, even though it is double layers. So it's got 2 layers. You can slide a pad in there. But even though it is double layers, it's you know, this with the underquilt is definitely lighter than my other hammock with that underquilt. It shaves a few ounces, even though it's double layer. Now, one issue that I think you can have with this hammock, and I'm gonna flip it around so you can kind of see, and that's not like a terrible issue, and it's really easy to mitigate. I don't know if that's even a proper usage of that word, but it's really easy to take care of this particular issue. But it is something that I did notice one night, and it was kind of my fault. So with this hammock, this is, your head's gonna be over here, or sorry, your feet are gonna be over there and your head's over here. So you can get as just the slightest amount of wind penetration here, and on the other side you saw the foot end, just where the hammock and in here meet. There's perhaps not quite the same level of protection, mostly in here, kind of near your feet. So I did get a little bit of chilliness on the top of my feet when I was in quite a bit of wind, and when I had my tarp set up kind of high by my feet, so wind was coming in, I felt that a little bit more with this hammock than I have maybe traditionally felt it with a full bottom quilt, because a full bottom quilt comes up much higher on the sides. But the flip side is there's no cold spots in this. I traditionally put a Thermarest Z-Lite pad in my foot box if it's at all cold or windy, and with that you get rid of it. There's no drafts then. Your feet are super toasty. And also, if I would have simply dropped my tarp down to cut that wind, that also would not have been present. But it is one minor flaw that I see in this particular design, and that's about it. I mean, the hammock has been amazing. It's super lightweight. As you can see, it takes no time at all to set up. I don't know if that's accurate, but I can set this up in about a quarter of the time, it seems, compared to my traditional hammocks. So setup time and everything like that makes this just killer. And the other thing I was thinking, you know, and I haven't even done this yet, so bear with me, and I'm not sure how I would do it, perhaps hooking it on hooks or something. But the other thing I was thinking is that, you know, a traditional or an extra underquilt protector might help with that wind and with just with it in general. I'm not sure I would add it on, just maybe move it around this foot would be fine. I've never tried this before, so and I feel like this might come up a little too much on the sides, but you know, just for kicks. Let's throw this under there and see if it protects the quilt, see how high it comes on the sides, and see if it would help with that wind a little bit. And so with this underquilt protector, it is adjustable, so you can bring it a little tighter. Now we have people screaming too, but cool. the beauty of living in the city. But you can snug these ends up a little bit by, it's just knots. So you can knot it and bring this up a little bit, and then you can snug these up some. But as you can see, it's covering this area pretty well. So this could give you another layer of protection when it comes to that wind cutting through. And also, since you are using a little bit shorter of a tarp, and not bad, but if you have a bigger tarp and higher, your tarp's going to come further away from the hammock. So if you are camping in more traditional camp spots where you have dirt on the ground, you're potentially going to get some splash up. That could hit the quilt, and even though it is dry down and it's a pretty good water resistant material that he uses for the outside material, you still want to eliminate as much of that water as possible. So this isn't a bad option to kind of add on to protect you from wind a little bit, give you a little extra vapor barrier, and to give you a little bit of extra splash protection, because this, your tarp's coming in closer, and if you're getting big splashes, you do have that potential for, like I said, for splashback. So there's the BoneFire Whisper. Great hammock if you want something that's fast, that's easy to set up, that's no fiddle factor, that's lightweight, that's minimal, that has huge peak shelves in here that you can stuff a million one things into. And one of the other advantages of that 10.5 foot is that your shelves are a lot lower. These were designed with Dream hammocks, so the suspension was designed with Dutch wear, so the shelves are really nice. So that's another thing with the shorter ridge line, you're much more able to reach up into those shelves and be able to access them and grab them. So that's another advantage of the 10.5 foot hammock. And when a 10.5 foot hammock or 10 foot or whatever is done correctly, you don't necessarily lose that comfort. And this hammock's very comfortable, so I'm not seeing any kind of really ill effects by it being a shorter hammock, in my opinion. And just for kicks, that side's actually higher, so that should be my foot side. I like my foot side to be up higher. I'm just going to crawl into it with this on and see what it feels like, and then end the video. Yeah, so the underquilt protector, in my opinion, works perfectly. Doesn't really cut out your view or anything like that. Wraps really nicely, comes to the end of the underquilt. So another good addition for the hammock. If you're looking for a little smidgen of heat retention, a little smidgen of waterproofing. So I babbled on enough. Awesome hammock company. Check them out, BoneFireGear.com. Jeremy is the maker. Really nice guy, and really awesome to work with. So thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, everybody.